I am Brennish Thompson. I'm a son of Ryan Thompson over here, a longtime fiddler, first-time player here at the tavern. So.
That's me, Ryan Thompson. We're the Fiddling Thomsons. I was trying to think of a name for him, and I was looking on a map of Scotland, and I'm aware of some of the Scottish names, and there's this little village over in the Isle of Skye, and it's called Brennish.
It's spelled super differently, obviously, is the Gaelic spelling, so it's like Braenies or something to that effect, you know, where sure you can sort of gather what it means, but yeah we kind of, I say he Americanized it, so, but yeah.
So he's British, and my parents just named me Ryan. We're actually probably a little more Scottish than Irish, but we're Scottish and Irish and a little Danish, and so that's where Ryan came from. Today what we're going to do is a very eclectic mix of a lot of different traditions, ranging from tunes from the Revolutionary War era. We're going to do some of that. We're going to do different ethnic type tunes of the types of people that used to live in this area way back and still do. There's the French influence in Scottish and English and other different things, some Swedish, some German, some of those different things on a whole bunch of different tunes.
We play a lot of kind of multicultural stuff. Most of it's dance music. It's ballads too, a lot of story kind of stuff. We grew up playing for Kaylee's in Boston and around this area here in Exeter, so it's really important to us to play the kind of the music that you know gets us moving in our chairs. I think it's cold here in New Hampshire sometimes.
A lot of the dance music came from overseas when people came over here and settled, and there tends to be in the New England area lots of Irish and Scottish and English influence, and some of the traditions are the Kaylee tradition in Ireland, where people would all gather in someone's house and they'd sing and they'd play music and people would dance. So we played a lot of that type of music. And then French influence comes from a lot of different places, and people settled here in New England, French-speaking people, and people settled up in Canada, and they also settled down in Louisiana. And so at various points, people from all three of those areas have relatives in other areas. Say we're traveling back to France, and then they'd come up to Canada, and then they'd come to New England, and maybe they have a relative down in Louisiana and New Orleans area. So a lot of that music is a kind of a blend of those different localities and regions.
Yeah, I mean, much like we're kind of a melting pot here in the States, the musical tradition sort of in the States is very much a similar vein. I mean, it's music that was, many of these tunes are played across 3 or 4 different groups in multiple places, and not just the U.S., but up in Canada and Mexico, and it's a lot of shared genes here in the music, and we just love that stuff. We kind of grew up in the New England tradition, which is, like you said, French and Scottish and Irish.
Typically, portable instruments are the instruments that were easy to travel with. If you were on a ship, you could bring a fiddle that wasn't that big. There's a tradition of ship's fiddlers. People played on the ships. Tin whistles are also smaller and lighter, and they're easy to carry. So a lot of the kind of music is going to be played on smaller instruments, and you can play different varieties of ethnic music on the same instruments. On board ships, people sang sea shanties, and so that's totally vocal. You're always carrying your voice with you everywhere you go.
Definitely from that period, we a lot of the music that we play carries over in one form or another. There's a game of telephone that happens, kind of cultural telephone with many of these tunes. They're not exactly the same as they were maybe 200 years ago, but there's a lot of similarities. Definitely, we will play some tunes, at least a few that are pretty in the same as they've been for the most part. No here or there change, but we like kind of carrying on a little bit of the old and bringing on some new as well. It's important to us. So.
Much of this music is traditionally learned by ear, so it's written out, and you can find music written out, but when you play for a long time, you start to improvise and you play variations. And in a written version, there's only one version that's frozen on the page. But traditionally, if you're playing for a dance or you're playing for your neighbors or for your own enjoyment, you start adding little things and changing things, like Glenn said. And that's how the tradition carries forward. You teach the tune to someone and they learn it, and then they play it, and someone else hears it and they learn it. And hopefully that's the way it's going to keep going.
Right now we're in this beautiful renaissance of young people coming back into music. So with the internet and YouTube, it's so accessible. You can pick up a ukulele for $100 and be able to play 10,000 songs with 4 chords. So that's a huge thing. So music's more accessible now, so the easier stuff is being spread a little faster. But there's also this incredible thing happening because people are able to share the music so much faster. We talked about oral tradition and learning these tunes through hearing them 100 times when you're 8 years old. Your grandfather or grandmother playing them or whatever. Is a little different than going on YouTube and listening at half speed 100 times in a row. You learn things at a different pace, right? So there's a rapid evolution here happening. So, but it's cool that we're in the middle of it, sort of. I definitely have gotten to see it. I think you've gotten a cross section of that as well.
You made me think of sound systems. We're using microphones and amplification, so that's a modern device. And what it allows us to do that you couldn't do 200 years ago is it's an equalizer in the terms that we can play a quiet instrument and a loud instrument at the same time. And they can be heard by an audience because we can amplify the quiet instruments with the microphone. And back in the days before you had amplification, loud instruments were the lead instrument. If you were playing at a square dance, a fiddle would be a loud instrument, and a whistle is fairly loud. But now we can have other instruments like a jaw harp and like a guitar, which isn't as loud and then we can have banjos and we can have things, and we can bring all that up so everyone can hear it.
We have this kind of natural, beautiful amphitheater here with the building behind us and the rock wall and things. So we're kind of blessed that we would be hopefully heard a little bit even if we didn't have all this fancy newfangled stuff. But it's nice to have it.
And we play often for certain events with no amplification at all. And we move around and we get in a location like Brendan said, the back of the building here is wonderful for reflecting the sound out. So I guess those are two major things that where music is involved. Oh, there's a couple other things. People are composing new music still, because that's part of the tradition. Tradition, by the definition, keeps moving along. So that you can look at a particular tradition and you can say, well, I'm going to play tunes that were all composed in 1930, but there's probably some real nice tunes that were composed in 1940. So, and then we're composing some of our own tunes. As we sit here, I have ideas going through my head. So we'll probably do a couple of original tunes.
I got a really blessed start. I started when I was real young. He got music, especially into the traditional music, a little bit later. But you're playing at like 7, right? You're playing piano and all sorts of 6 or 7. Yeah. So. Music playing growing up, and then I sort of had that same thing. I think he recognized that was a useful thing. So when I was 18 months old, he'd be playing above my crib, and I'd grab the fiddle out of his hands and try to play it. So by 2, I was playing fiddle and learning tunes and things. So I think maybe 8 years old was the first time I ever played truly on stage, and I probably played a pair of spoons, not too dissimilar from this. It's a good starter instrument to be on stage. But now there's a lot of self-learning. I've learned a huge amount on my own. I have studied with a lot of kind of very respected people that I look up to a huge amount to. So I've been blessed to get a lot of great musical influences. Of course, I get a huge amount from my father and our family going back many generations. We're all musicians, amateur most of them, but yeah. So we're the breakouts a little bit, but we like to carry it on. So
my mother learned how to play piano by ear. And she had a player piano, and her family didn't have enough money for music lessons, but they had an old player piano, and they would run tunes through it, and she would watch how the keys went down, and she'd memorize. So she learned all these tunes. So when I grew up, my mother already knew how to play the piano, and she could sing. I have to give a lot of credit to my family, I think, for most of my inspiration, because they were the people that showed me that it's kind of fun to make music. My grandmother had an organ and she'd sing gospel songs, and my other grandfather had a mandolin that we still have, and we'd hear family members singing. My dad would have a really beautiful voice and he'd be singing, and my mom she was kind of an instrument collector, and I learned on a banjo that was actually my mother's banjo. I borrowed it from her. I think she was worried about when I was going to give it back, and I said it wasn't until I got a good one of my own. But so I have to give a lot of credit to family. We've had family members, as Brendan said, going way back that have been in performing groups. Some of them were professional and they toured around the country. Others just made music in their own houses within the family.
I think for us, it's more important than anything else is that for us, it's been a connecting thing. I mean, we've met people and been in situations we never would have been in had it not for carrying a fiddle on your back through a subway or having a penny whistle in your pocket or something. So I think we both share a huge amount. We love the connections that you get from the music and and the people that you meet, it's just a wonderful community, and we're always finding more too. There's always musical appreciators that you don't notice, until they hear the right tune and then they get hooked. That for me is super strong. I'm sure
you like to see people dancing and moving in their seats.
Yeah.